Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this year's 2021 RDM workshop for LIBER. We have a full list of attendees. We have a full program with interesting speakers. And I hope you will be part of an energetic and interesting workshop today. Since we have quite a tight schedule and a full program, I'd like to start immediately. It's a special year. It's the 50th annual conference, virtually, as we all know. And well, that has provides many good assets in terms of more people being able to share probably than otherwise would have been the case. The topic for this year's webinar is the FAIR data enabling through European research libraries. And it's organized by the working group, the LIBER working group. We have, before we get to the program, I have to go quickly through the housekeeping rules that, like other sessions, this session is recorded, and we'll share the recording and slides afterwards. If you have any questions for the speakers, type them in the attendee chat on the right side of the screen, and I will address these at the end of the session where possible. Then if you have any technical issues, check your settings and internet connection. And if you don't make it, try to rejoin by closing your browser tab and reopening the link provided. Yeah, thank you all again for attending, and I hope you'll enjoy this session. If I look at the agenda, we start with the presentation of Liisi. Liisi is one of our working group members, and one of the activities we did last year is not only define the topics for the work plan, but also work with task forces to pick up a specific theme and then try to work towards the deliverable. The group where Liisi was in worked on the 6 pillars of engaging researchers in research data management, and they made a report that focuses on engaging researchers and which provides further guidance to everyone who's working in the field of RDM. That's the presentation where we will start with. As part of so to say of the introduction. Then we have 4 topical presentations specifically related to the FAIR topic of today's workshop. The first is FAIRsFAIR. It's a presentation from Claudia Engelhardt on the booksprint. Then we have a presentation of Sven Vlaeminck. Interesting presentation on recent developments of journals, data policies, and economics, but I think also of interest to other disciplines as well. Then we have a presentation on data champions, the initiative at the EPFL, and fair practices from Francesco Varrato, and we have a presentation of Eva Hnatkova on DocEnhance and their experience with piloting a data stewardship course. Then we're on to that. If all that goes well, we have a short break for 5 minutes. And then we have some time for discussion. So our idea is to have a team discussion on FAIR enabling. And we have a few questions prepared through a Zoom poll to get to make it somewhat interactive, and we're very interested to see your answers to these questions. Okay, without further ado, I think I now give the floor to Liisi.
Rob, can you share the slides?
Yeah. Let me say, well, I have, Liisi, sorry, before I go to you, I have one more slide that with an overview of our active working group members like Claudia Kramer, Eliane Bloemer, Liisi, Marta Teperek is in our group, Marie Elisa is with us, Miriam Braskova now at EPFL, Philip Gonzet from Norway, Sibute, Dragan, and Kirsten from Denmark, and myself, I'm also a working group member. Besides the research engagement topic on which Liisi will present, other topics that we had selected last year as a priority for the working group are fair guidance curation, data rights in the GDPR, data stewardship, the DMP catalog, RDM instructions and training, and the RDM policy implementations. Sorry for a small delay, Liisi. Now the floor is yours.
Yep, but can you share the slides? Because we haven't seen the slides.
You see the slides, right? The 6 pillars.
We can't. We haven't seen any of the slides so far.
You haven't seen any?
No.
Oh, that's well, that's well. Can you see my slide right now then?
No. Do you want me to share the slides?
No, let's see. You are sharing, you are screen sharing, says my computer.
We see it now.
Okay. Please, with hope of a better past, I would have appreciated if someone immediately said, "Hey, I can't see your." I was assuming that you could see my screen. Okay. So this was the first slide. Going with the welcome introduction. Here is the also introductory slide. The session ground rules, the agenda that I talked briefly about, working group members, and here's the 6 pillars. Go ahead, Liisi.
Okay, thank you very much. So as Rob mentioned, I'm part of the working group, and I'm also part of the subtask group where we try to figure out how we can engage researchers in the data management, because it's always, we may do things in the library, but how to get the researchers involved is always a big question. So there were 4 of us, and because our group was very small, we basically did a desktop research. We looked at best practices and other libraries and universities, what had been done in the past. And picked out the things that the libraries, like practical guide for libraries, because a lot of times they may be in different sections of the universities and not specific in libraries. So we try to focus on libraries because it's LIBER here. So our main inspiration was the document called Engaging Researchers in Data Management, the cookbook. Hopefully you've all read that. If not, I'll put the link in the chat later on. And so basically it consists of 24 case studies, how to involve researchers in research data management. And we went through this one, and in addition to additional resources, we made practical guidelines just for the libraries. So Rob, if you can change the slide, please. So here are the 6 pillars that we came up with. Depending on how far your library is already in the being involved in research data management, you can either pick 1 pillar or you can look at all 6 pillars. So they are not dependent on each other. So as you can see, there are 6 pillars that we came up with, and underneath each pillar, there are like really short practical ideas that you could do in your library. So you can just pick the ones that you want, or depending on where you are, pick the ones that you actually need. So hopefully it will give you some ideas and inspirations. I'm not going to go through all of these right now because we're running out of time, but each of them has about 4 to 7 practical tips what you could do in your libraries. So hopefully it's useful for you, and maybe you can share if you have read it, or if there's something that we are really missing, that maybe we can later on make an upgraded version of this thing. So thank you. That's all from me.
Okay. Yes, then we're now ready for our first presentation. I think we have some extra time, but that's good. So I can stop share. I will stop sharing my screen, and then Claudia You're next. Okay. I stop sharing my screen
Yes.
right now.
Okay. Okay, shall I already start sharing my screen while you probably... Okay, so you should be able to see my slides now. Are you?
Yep.
Okay. And this is presentation mode. Okay, shall I start?
Yep. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. And hello to everyone from my side as well. I'm happy to talk about a little, or a book sprint exercise that we did a few weeks ago. Just a few words about myself. My name is Claudia Engelhardt. I'm based at Göttingen State and University Library in Germany. And I've been working since 2011 there, involved in several projects, or in a number of projects dealing with research data management, and recently also the FAIR principles and FAIR data. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here today to report about this endeavor that we are engaging in. So a few words, I'm really trying to keep this brief about the FAIRsFAIR project. It's a big EU project with 22 partners from 8 different states. It's running for 36 months. It started in March 2019. So we're already in our 3rd year. It's running until February 2022, right? Exactly. Yeah, as I said, it's a rather large project, and we're also cooperating with a lot of different partners like the RDA, CoData, GoFair, the S3 clusters, and some more. So, and the basic aim, to put it broadly, of FAIRsFAIR is to foster fair data practices in several respects. So this is a slide that tries to summarize what FAIRsFAIR is doing. So FAIR is related to a number of different aspects in the research process, and also to infrastructures. And so there are different fields that the project is active in. So here in green, there's one part that deals with certification and also a lot with repositories. So for example, there is support and guidance for repositories. There's a fair data assessment tool, and a lot more. There are several activities dealing with data practices and enhancing data practices in terms of fair compliance. Data policies are also a field that we're active in a lot. And then here on the right side in blue, there's this whole complex of competencies, education, and training. And this is directed towards several target groups. So on the one hand, there's a work package that deals with training and also education for data stewards and other data-related support roles. But there's also a dedicated work package that deals with higher education institutions and how we can bring the FAIR principles into higher education institutions, specifically into curricula and teaching at universities. And this is the work package that I'm mainly involved in, and that this task that I am talking about in the following is located at. So, fair and higher education, what are the aims and main activities of this work package? So, the first exercise that we did was to analyze the landscape of available fair data education in Europe. We did this in the beginning of the project, and there's a report out already. Then we developed a fair data competence framework for higher education that is a sort of high-level framework to support the development of fair teaching and fair data culture and the uptake of the FAIR principles in university teaching. And the next step, so this competence framework was published in the end of February. So the next step is, okay, this rather high level competence framework, how can we translate this into practical things or practical tools that universities can use to actually integrate this into their curricula and teaching. Alongside all these activities, there are also a number of workshops and other knowledge sharing activities that we are engaging in. So here's another slide that shows the overview of the progress so far. So this landscaping exercise resulted, there was a survey involved and also stakeholder focus groups, resulted in a report. You can see the DOI here. So this is done. There's another report about the landscape of initiatives that are dealing with fair competences, fair education, fair training that is already existing. That's sub D7.2, this report here, the competence framework. And now we are working on the adoption handbook that translates the competence framework into practical guidance and tools for universities. So, and this is where the booksprint is connected to or related to. And then there will, and the final product will be released in December 2021, so December this year. And there will also be a good practices report also coming out at the end of the year. So yeah, the booksprint was the method or the tool that we used to, or that we are using to create this adoption handbook. It took place in the beginning of June from the 1st to the 10th. To produce the Competences Adoption Handbook for universities. And please note that this is a working title. We still have several final titles in discussion. So who is specifically the target group of the handbook? This is really people involved in university teaching and training. So primarily, or firstly, of course, lecturers and professors or other staff members that actually do teach, do design courses and curricula. Also program managers, support personnel, and other staff, for example, people on the management level. And the purpose is really to provide practical guidance and support in integrating the FAIR principles into the teaching and the curricula. What's the content, or what will the content of the handbook be? So the main components are competence profiles for the bachelor, master, and PhD level, together with learning outcomes. And then there's a number of lesson plans that can be used for model courses on topics related to the FAIR principles. And there's supporting information about course design and implementation at the institutional level. So the booksprint itself, we chose this tool, or one of the main motivations was to involve the community and to collaboratively create the handbook, to draw on more or a broader field of expertise that is actually present in the task group. There was a call for participation, and we had about, I think, between 50 and 60 applicants, and most of the applications were really good, really people with a lot of expertise and experience. And finally, we admitted 38 participants from 16 countries in total, mainly from Europe, but also from other parts of the world. In the background of this slide, you see a map where a few, not all of the participants, but a few of the participants marked their locations with the little pins. So you see it's rather widespread, which did cause challenges in terms of time zones, of course. Yeah, people had diverse backgrounds. Most of them were affiliated to universities and are involved in teaching and curricula design and so forth. But we also had participants from research infrastructures and national agencies. So how exactly did this booksprint take place? We, of course, had to do it virtually. And we conducted 6 sessions in total. You see them here. Each session had a time frame of 3 hours. We had 1 kickoff session and 1 wrap-up session, but in between we had 4 dedicated sprint sessions where really the main activity was writing collaboratively on the text. And so one of the sprint sessions would just begin with 10 minutes of like introduction, saying hello, talking about the previous session, and wrapping up. And then we had 2 sessions of about 1 hour where people broke out in breakout groups that were dedicated to specific topics or chapters. Yeah, and collaboratively just wrote and worked on the content. And although this was a virtual format and we were a bit worried before because we thought, oh, it would probably work much better face to face, this actually worked quite well. Although we did find in the end that the 3-hour sessions were a bit short. So we could have actually used more time and probably more sessions. But on the other hand, people have other things to do as well. And so this is really a balance that has to be found. So what tools did we use? Google Docs, because we thought it was the tool that for writing, the tool that people were most used to. Zoom for meeting, Slack also for conversation, and Murals. So this is a whiteboard tool. And this is my last slide. I have the time in mind. Yeah. And after the book sprint, there's, of course, the book was not, or the handbook is not ready yet. The 6 sprint sessions were not enough, so we still have to do some work. And this is the rough schedule for the procedure of further editing and finalizing the book. I won't go into detail for everyone, for every single item here, but just want to sorry, I'm looking for the word, to stress 2 or 3 things or 3 steps where we are hoping to further involve and get feedback from the community. So we will prepare a first draft of the handbook by the middle of July, roughly. And then we are planning to have a public consultation. So we will publish this first draft and ask the community to have a look and to give feedback. This will be advertised via relevant email lists and also the FAIRsFAIR website. So if you're interested in this and if you're keen to contribute or to give feedback, watch out for this. We will also have a workshop. So after the community feedback, we will integrate the feedback and produce a revised version of the handbook, which we will then present in a workshop in October, on the 12th of October, to get further feedback. And after that, we will finalize the handbook and publish it on Zenodo in December. There is also one step that we would really like to do, but it's really depending on remaining resources to transfer, because the publication on Zenodo will be in the form of a PDF, which is not the perfect format for updates, for example. So we might transfer to another format, such as a wiki or a GitHub. But this is still under discussion and has to be seen how it goes and how much resources we have left. So that was a short wrap up. If you have any questions, I'm not sure if we have much time for questions now, but you can also just email me afterwards. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Yes, we will have some time maybe after the 4 presentations directly, and otherwise after the small break. That's my suggestion. We're now going over to the presentation of Sven, I think, and where Claudia kindly introduced herself. I'm now going to introduce Sven briefly. So Sven is a research associate and has been working for the Leibniz Information Center for Economics, ZBW in Hamburg, since 2010. And his main task is the product management of the ZBW Journal Data Archive, which is a data repository for economics journals. And together with a colleague, he regularly gives training for PhD and master students on good scientific practice and reproducible economics research. And Sven has a degree in political science with a focus on quantitative social science research. Sven, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rob, for the kind introduction. So yeah, so in the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to talk about, here it is, the agenda. So my talk consists mainly of 3 parts. I'd like to start with a short introduction about economics, journals, and data policies, a brief history, as I would like to call it. It's a difficult relationship, yeah, but we'll have a look at it. And subsequently, I'd like to present to you some results, a few results only, of a study that I conducted on economics, journals, data policies. And I'd like to conclude by asking the question, what does this mean for us, for the research libraries? And yes, so the brief history of economics, journals, and their data policies. So the whole issue has been discussed since, I think, 1986, where the 3 economists, Diebold, Thursby, and Anderson, regarded a full issue of one of the top journals in economics. And well, they discussed their findings when it comes to empirical articles, and they found that it's a commonplace rather than a rare occurrence that there are errors in these published articles. Since at that point in time, we have an ongoing debate in economics on how to foster reproducible research, on data policies, all these things. So more than 20 years later, B.D. McCullough, this is an US economist, wrapped up a little bit what has changed since that point in time. And he said, well, since 1993, in total, we had 17 top journals which had mandatory data policies and data archives, which is obviously not a lot. Well, I conducted a study in 2013 in which I analyzed 141 journals, and 40 of these had data policy. So this is a little bit more than a fourth, obviously. And well, I found 2 different types of policies, and I want to briefly introduce these 2 policies here, because I found 11 so-called, or as I call it, author responsibility policies. This is a policy we can also label as data upon request policy. So it means an author wants to publish a paper and he says, okay, I'm fine. In the case of upcoming requests, I will disclose my data and my program code with would-be replicators and all persons who are interested in my data. Sounds nice, sounds easy, but it does not work due to the incentive structures in science and research. Nobody's interested in assisting others in reproducing your personal results of a paper. In sharp contrast, I think since 2004, journals have started to implement so-called data availability policies. And the big contrast to these author responsibility policies is that you have to provide the editorial office, or nowadays a recognized data repository, with your replication files prior to publication. And this is important because it shifts the responsibility from the author to a third party. Okay, in 2015, I checked another sample, which has been a little bit more representative of 346 journals in economics. And well, the share dropped to only a little bit more than a fifth. But as I mentioned, the sample is a little bit more representative because what we see is that mainly the top journals have data policies, while the journals which are classified as C, D, E journals, whatever, often do not have these policies. Okay, here I found at least that the majority of these policies are these data availability policies. And yeah, then something happened, because 2 years later, Höffler regarded all the journals in the Journal Citation Reports Economics, and he found for the first time in history, I might say, that there is a majority of journals which have a data policy. And his findings have been generally confirmed by Qing and Dong. They checked 74 journals, and even 58 had data policies, and the majority of these policies were also mandatory, which is not common. Okay, I also conducted a study, I think I made it in 2019, and the paper is currently under review, so hopefully you will be able to read all the results that I cannot present today, later this year. But the aims of the study were to show, okay, how do the number of economics journals, or what's the number of economics journals, which types of data policy, and this is, I can't talk about this in this talk due to time constraints, but what are the requirements of these policies? So what information do they want to have, which kind of files? What about the degree of obligation? Are they mandatory? Are they voluntary? And especially for economics research, it's quite important to have also a procedure in the event a researcher used restricted data. And of course, it's also been of interest to see what journals suggest on how to publish the replication data. And the sample were all the journals that were listed in the Journal Citation Reports Economics 2017. So all the impact factor journals in the field of economics. And the methodology, I used the content analysis. Okay, and here only very few findings. So of all the journals in the JCR Economics that generally publish or accept empirical, or as I like to call it, data-based articles, more than 2/3 have a data policy. And the vast majority are data availability policies. This is good news. This is good news. These author responsibility policies or data upon request policies are still in use, but well, they're not that important. And almost 1/3 still does not have a policy, data policy yet. What is quite of interest is when you have a look at the publishers and the types of data policies they are using for the journal. So on the left hand here, you see the number of journals of these big publishing companies. And as you can see, we have 4 publishers that I think almost half of all the journals in the Journal Citation Reports Economics are part of Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, and Wiley. So these are the most important publishing companies in economics for economics journals. And as you can see, specifically Elsevier and Taylor and Francis, and of course the American Economic Association, have very high rates of journals with data availability policies. These policies are often very identical, at least when they belong to one publisher. So almost all of the Elsevier journals have policies that sounds quite alike. And well, this is something very different compared to the situation a few years ago, where we mainly found individual journal data policies. And well, what really happened in these 5 years is visible from this slide. So especially here. So in 2014, we only had 47 journals with data availability policies and 184 in 2019. So, and well, this share and or this number really dropped. So there's been a massive increase in journals' data policies, and publishers seem to be the drivers of the shift. But I also have to say that the average quality of this journal has not necessarily improved. Many are still voluntary, many are not very precise, and they are not subject specific most often. Okay, so these results, what do they mean for research libraries? Well, I believe more and more journals have this type of policy. Maybe also more and more of these policies become mandatory for the researchers. So I believe many researchers will seek support in meeting these requirements of the journals. And I think we as libraries can help. So we, for instance, we can offer hands-on workshops mainly for young researchers, I believe, on how to make their research reproducible. We are running this type of workshops at ZBW, and well, they're heavily overbooked and very successful. So this is something I really can recommend. In the event you do not want or cannot offer these type of workshops, maybe it's another idea to develop information materials on reproducibility, and also some information on how to meet the demands of journals' data policies. Another thing could be, in the same way as we support researchers with the requirements of the funding agencies, of the research funders, is to support the researchers in meeting the demands of the data policies. So also on a very applied level. So you have to go through the code, maybe have a look at the code. What can you do to make this code more reproducible, more understandable to other researchers? And last but not least, I think, and this is something that we probably all do more or less, since sometimes to advise researchers in finding useful data repositories, but I think it's also very important to give some information on using these data repositories. Okay, that's it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Sven, for this presentation. Yeah, let's keep the questions from the audience to keep them in your mind, reserve them for later, or share them through the chat so that we can all have a look at the questions that emerge from the presentations, and we can start thinking about the questions from the audience together. We're quite on time, so let's keep that pace. And I think our third presentation is from Francesco. So I'm going to quickly introduce Francesco. Francesco earned a PhD in computational physics from EPFL. After teaching and startup experiences since 2018, he is part of the EPFL Research Data Library team, where we assist researchers, professors, and students in research data management best practices by providing training and advice and developing support material. Francesco has a personal interest in complex systems, electronic devices, artificial intelligence, and machine learning for public services. Francesco, floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. And I will try to have another angle to this for these topics of the implementing the FAIR data principles into university. And I will try to talk to you about the Data Champions initiative we have at EPFL. This is not a new kind of initiative. Maybe there are some colleagues from Cambridge or TU Delft, but I would like to highlight some of the perks and some of the difference in here. Oops, sorry, spoiler. My first guess is that we can actually pass from research data management to the open science realm, passing also through the open data part of the open science. But to do this, we need the FAIR principles, and we need to implement them. We need the researchers to implement them. There is a kind of recent report from the European Union about the open data maturity. Apparently, we are not so far away from let's say a good standard, but we still need more than 20%. Let's say the way to go is there. We have to do it. My point of view is that the good practices exist already, and the good practices are meant to be in this FAIR part where there is the overlap, let's say, between research data management and the open science part. So we are targeting the open data, the open source, of course, and the other parts, but the FAIR principles are there to help us. How to implement them? You've been speaking about policies and about the engagement of people, but up to now, we have seen a lot of top-down approaches, and there are institutional data policies or guidelines by founders. For instance, in the EPFL case, we don't have an official data policy. We have a draft of it, but we have an open science scientific committee. So we see the general direction, but we still lack this precise top-down approach, even though there are funders who provide it. And the fact is, researchers are confused because these approaches are not going to tell them what to do in practice most of the time. And so we try something a little bit on the side. This is a cultural shift. We have not to forget that this is a shift in the culture of a university and in the minds of the people. So we have a structure, we are an institution, and we have people, we have policies, we have a lot of top-down pressure right now. But as I told you, from practices, we also can have a push from the bottom-up approach, from another point of view, and to push forward, not just for the policies, but also for the structure in order to actually revise the way things are done on the higher level. The approach is not unique then, and we need some other possible approach. A possible approach that we are dealing with at EPFL is the initiative of the data champions. This is a community. It's made by people. It is interdisciplinary. It is very important for it to be interdisciplinary. It's made by voluntary people. They are both researchers and staff. It's also very important because we need someone who stay there because otherwise there is a lot of turnover of researchers. And what they do, they advocate for fair data principles. They promote good data management. They advise the community. They advise themselves and the community, and they make it grow. Let's say that there is something in common, which is passion for data and code, I would say, and the fair data principles, of course. Whether they know it or not, because most of these practices are just recently, let's say, in the phase of what you are living now, being categorized as fair data principles, even though they were there even before for many of them. And the library supports them, and we actually have a web page, Google Drive, GitHub, Slack, email, LinkedIn, all the possible ways to communicate and make them visible. So the idea is to have not real barriers. People in the data champions might be professors, managers of the high level, or PhD students, let's say, or early researchers. I mean, they all have the same degree of possibility to make their discussion be heard. How it works, that we try to have, so the library provides organization support, communication, and so on and so forth. We discuss with the other faculties, other services, and people from the other services, might they be researchers, staff, technicians, specialists, lawyers, administrative people, and really from the IT, and of course researchers. They make this group of people, and we collaborate, and we organize, and we deal with different topics. Before I go forward, I would like to highlight some of the whys are these people joining the community. And you can actually see this bottom-up wheel they have. They want to share and get new ideas. They want to share their experience with acquiring, producing, and analyzing data, the best practice data formats, and really the sorting, the traceability, archiving, sharing in the institution for data and code. They want to help in training the others. Some of them, they want to revolutionize the scientific community to make it truly collective. So you can actually see that there is a drive, a personal drive in here. And that's why a bottom-up approach is possible in the first place. Some numbers. We started not so far away in time, end of 2019. You have to take in mind that there is a pandemic from then to now. The number of data champions is actually stable around almost 50. They represent a lot of schools, institutes, and services inside the EPFL. And we have 3 to 4 meetings per year, general ones, plus very informal, more informal meetings each month, shorter ones. We discuss many topics. I try to highlight some more close to the FAIR principle, but you understand all of these topics are connected. But for instance, the open data metrics, the reproducibility of code, and the platforms to do it, the publishing of code, or the preservation versus publication of data sets, data policies, archiving of data, how to peer review, is it possible to preview data sets, ELNs, and so on and so forth. So all of this, all this sharing of expertise, tools, and point of view make up for a real implementation of FAIR data principles. Other let's say activities, for instance, they participated to write down a question and answer that is published on the webpage of the Data Champions community. They participated actively to provide training with the library. For instance, accredited course for research data management for chemists, the power of metadata training we provide. We have a repository of GitHub. There are a lot of collaborative documents on which they can actually put their comments as specialists and then as forward-looking people for DMPs, data tools, platforms, policies. And of course, they help each other and they help the community. For instance, topics have been about open education platform, publishing reproducible code, how to use Python for data preservation, some tips for data security, why not elaborating together or provide comments for new DMP templates for new institutions. Be aware that data champions are not data stewards, are not data managers, not data librarians officer. There is not a concrete, there is not a stiff definition because they are volunteer, they're not paid. And that's also the beauty of having this community. So let's go to the to the bad and good part. The bad part, some HR is needed. I am an example. It's more or less 10% of my time, which is not so much. One more difficult part for us, for the institution, is that it is very difficult to measure the impact on FAIR principles, on the awareness and on the implementation of FAIR data principles. I guess this is a very common topic because it's very difficult to measure impacts, and especially the impact of principles. But this is maybe for another discussion. Other negative is that there is some need for a little, at least, availability from the part of the data champions, and there is this need of visibility. We need champions to make visible to the others that it is possible to have these FAIR principles applied to research. Apart from that, I think that the pros outweigh the cons. They are motivated group of people. You can do focus groups with them. They actually add for training. They can actually influence directly the practice of their labs and institutions. They can actually provide some support for very specific topics that they are usually not treated on the let's say institutional level. And of course, they can do network. They can improve their own research because there is peer learning. They can discover new tools, and of course, why not boost their curriculum vitae. Last but not least, I would say that is okay for our case to actually replace the data champions in here. The FAIR principle with the data champions if we want to think about people and about what can be one of the drives, one of the leverages to use for the institutions and for the libraries in our case. They actually love open source and open data, and if we want to actually slice up the open science part. And I would like to stress on the fact that good practices already exist. Good FAIR practice already exists, and this is one example of how to leverage it and how to provide an implementation of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, for again another interesting presentation. Well, the taste is for more. So let's go over to our last presentation in this hour from Eva Hnatkova. I hope I pronounced that reasonably well. If not, correct me, Eva. I'll introduce you now briefly. Regarding my introduction, you can, well, Eva is Open Science Coordinator from the National Library of Technology in Prague. But she has more hats, and she's also coordinator of the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, where the DataShip course was piloted. And she's also involved in the DocEnhance project, on which she will introduce herself a little bit further. So go ahead, Eva.
Good morning, everyone from Prague. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me well. Yes?
Yes, very good.
Okay, great.
All
so
clear.
I can, so I will try to tell you, I have more slides, so I will go quickly about the piloting our data stewardship course, which was produced by DocEnhance. So here, quick overview. So I will give you a few background information to understand, then something about this DocEnhance project, data stewardship course, and its 3 modules, and also where these modules will be available later. So as Rob said, I'm an open science coordinator at the National Library of Technology, but also at the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague. And here the library is incorporated within this national one because it is in one campus. I'm also former Eurodoc president, and I'm involved in DocEnhance on behalf of Eurodoc as an advisory board member. And my background is process engineering. Very shortly about Eurodoc, this is the European Council of Doctoral Candidates and Junior Researchers. It is the federation of 28 national associations who represent early-career researchers. And we identified 3 key issues for those target group. First one is the career development, and this especially for non-library market. The second one is the open science, because early-career researchers often they don't know what is open science and how they can practice. And the third one is the mental health, because especially again with the doctoral level, there are key issue even before pandemic that the number was very, very high. And to help to raise this issue in one of our working group, I was involved. We work on this importance of transferable skills for early-career researchers to make them also more employable at the market. And here you can see the open data or research data management, open licensing, were a few of them. And now I will switch to the DocEnhance. So DocEnhance is the European project. It was launched. It is the coordination and support action. And the aim of the project is to broadening the PhD expertise and especially to bring this transferable skills training into the structure curricula of the current doctoral programs, because this is often missing. The project duration of the project is 3 years. It is funded by Horizon 2020, and there are 19 partner organizations, and coordinator of the consortium is the University of Tromsø, the North Term University in the world. And on the picture you can see our group. So within the project, as this is coordination and support action, there are many other, let's say, outputs as career development, career tracking, or the platform, but some of them are these key deliverable are 3 pilot courses, which will be open for reuse on a DocEnhance platform under CC BY license. So anyone can use it, adapt, or even use them for the commercial purposes. And the planned release will be end of the 22, but the courses will be updated already before, but there will be some revision process still, because this is the pilot. So within these three courses, there is data stewardship course, and this course we piloted at the university. And here you can see the picture about 3 persons who work on this data stewardship work. They are the specialists from the University of Tromsø, who are also involved in research data management teaching. And why we choose, or why they? Because they have huge experience in research data management. So to share the best practices. So thanks to Helen, Henning, and Leif, who prepare all for us. What is the aim of the course? So especially to introduce the complexity of and significance of research data management within the research to PhD candidates. So target group is especially the PhD candidates. And in the course, we wanted to cover all the research cycle. So from the finding relevant data to publishing and own data sets and share with others. Also, the course should help the PhD candidates in their theses and make them prepare better for the job also outside the academy once they will graduate, because around 70% will go outside the academia. And the aim was to combine practical exercises with the theoretical content. So this pilot course was piloted by 2 universities, this University Chemistry of Technology in Prague and Karlstad University in Sweden. We have around 25 participants from PhD candidates and each teacher. And as this was the pilot, we wanted to give them some revanche for their subsequent feedback and helping to shape the course. So they have some financial remuneration. Because it's not still, let's say, accredited, they will not have other benefit instead of their own knowledge. So now we can see the 3 modules within the course. So this module was concept, first module as open education resources as an online lecture. Second one was like working in the group, more practical, and using interdisciplinarity, like working with the colleagues or different data. And the third one was focusing also on the mobility. This is for this experience networking and also the intersectoral mobility, so collaboration with local companies. So again, the module 1, these are the online lecture with the basic introduction, how to handle the research data, especially for a PhD thesis. It's general for everyone, so it's not specific for some group. Then there were the module 2 workshop and with the task, and the tasks were done in the small working groups, and here was important to make some practical stuff that participant can learn by doing. And we use also our local resources based on our demands. So here we could go to our specific domain and discipline more. And the third module was the workshop with like employees and with public sector, and should be focused on practical tasks, cooperation, and again putting practice the theory and their practical skills. So in the module 1, here we can see the 10 thematic sections that focus on motivation, theory, concepts. It took about 16 hours. And this was combination of the text, video. With the video, there was a transcript, also suggested reading, and interaction via quiz and some open food for thoughts. You can see here the example. It was run on the platform Moodle. So this is just the example with the video. And at the end of this exam, there was at the end of the module 1, there was the exam. And if you get like more than 80% right answer, you receive the certification, which was generated automatically by the system that we prepared. Then the module 1, as I said, this was more practical. It was again the teacher or training materials was available for the teachers or lecturers at the Moodle platform, so they could use it, and we could modify it with our own content. So the concept was 6 3 hours workshop, And we use it via Teams because of the pandemic situation. And we have also some extra event and wrap-up section. And for the collaboration, we use the breakout rooms that the people could work together in very small groups. And here you can see the plan, and I will show you just example of 2 of them. Here is the example of the data management, and we prepare because we are collaborating with Data Stewardship Wizard, which is the online tool, very, very nice that people can collaborate inside. And so we prepare specific template for PhD, like with let's say less questions, and they could work together in the online version. And it's also nice that you can select like in which section you are, like at the beginning of the proposal or in the middle or after. So they could work directly in the small groups in it. Another example, like to make something practical, because we don't have our own infrastructure for our repositories, not yet. So we use Zenodo, and here they also try to upload like the procedure, like how to upload the things on Zenodo. Many of them didn't know about Zenodo. And here we cover all this, let's say, FAIR principle, because like to find it, there is the object identifier, some basic metadata, also the access to license, and so on. And I can say that they very much enjoy this practical thing. And model 3, it was intended again for the advice and interaction with non-academic sector. And content of this module is depending very much on the local stakeholder team. And again, the teaching materials was for teachers of this module form. Here you can see only the examples. So we have 1-day workshop, which was divided in 3 sections. The first one was with the speakers at the introducing European level, the national and institutional level. So like introducing EOS. And in the afternoon section, there was a collaboration with the local companies, Unipetrol and Zentiva. So one is chemical company, another one it's pharmaceutical one. So they had also opportunities to meet this future employment. So how to implement this course? So local university can decide if like PhD candidate will receive the credit to taking this course, like if this will be accredited later. And like the complexity of these 3 modules can be good for the whole examination. Let's say in the first part, you have this certification if you pass the test, but you can also let's say having your own short-term venture on data management plan and so on. And at the end, here you can see the DocEnhance platform. So this is under the development. It will be dynamic, adaptable platform for online collaboration. It will be integrated into the European PhD Hub, which brings together academic and industry. And all the training resources, courses, guidelines will be freely available under this CC BY license. And the aim here is to support innovative career-oriented PhD training. And that's is all. And as I said, the officially release will be by the 2022. But already now we are collecting the feedback from the participants. And after the feedback, there will be revision. And once the course is revised, I think it will be in the autumn. It will be already on the platform and could be used by others and they can use it for their own things. And only last one, this is the Horizon Europe. Just if you could be interested, the call also with the open science, so you may go through and you may apply for the similar project within the new call. So thank you for invitation, and if you will have some question, comments, you can come to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you all for a very interesting variety of presentations. So much going on in this field. It's really energetic. Since we have quite some time, I'd like to open up the floor for questions. it's a little bit of improvisation. Let's see if the audience has any questions, and then my idea is so if you have any question to one of the presenters, please speak up, and then let the presenter, him or herself, answer your question. Yes, so is there anyone who has a question for either Claudia or Liisi or Eva or Sven or Francesco? Great silence, of course. Let me see what came up in the chat. Okay. Apparently no immediate pressing questions. So I conclude from this that all presentations were very clear, or that people are overly shy. But that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I hear someone. Do I hear a voice?
It's me, Eva. I would like to say maybe a few experience from the PhD from the participants, and I would like to from the feedback that they would really appreciate more practical stuff like combination, not only, let's say, the online. So it's very, very important to have some practical they can interact together. That this was very highly appreciated by them. So I just wanted to share this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I have a question for Francesco. Francesco, since your approach to the data stewardship, so if you first studied the policies from other universities and then you decided to do it slightly different, can you elaborate a little bit more on not so much maybe why you did that, but also the combination of why you did it and what the results are from doing it differently?
So we don't have a data policy at EPFL at the moment. We've been kind of waiting because there is a draft, but at the Swiss level, there is also something going on. So there is some buffer waiting time for it. And also from Europe, we should kind of align in a way. Our approach for data stewardship is not to have stewardship. Well, the categorization is always difficult. I mean, what is a data steward? What is a data champion? The idea is that we have volunteers, that we have living proof that good stuff can happen, that good practices are there. And as Eva was saying, the practical part is very important. And we have now this mixed approach because we provide training, for instance, for basic knowledge and awareness. But this way we can also go more in detail. We can do already within the library and with other partners. But it's much more, let's say, intuitive for researchers to listen to other researchers about their experience. Yeah. And one more thing is that our approach is kind of evolving because at least I'm also involved in kind of integrating our services with the other central services. I'm in touch with the DPO, the Digital Protection Officer, Data Protection Officer, or DPFL. We are in touch with the legal part, with the research office that also provide legal advice to the researchers, with the technology transfer office that are more involved with the patents. As you can tell, researchers are kind of tired of not knowing who to contact for just one piece of information. But we are trying to actually streamline this part, not to have a black box, but to have a box at least, in which they can put their request and then they will have an answer. And or at least someone else will tell them who to contact in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I'm really interested in the, since I find that difficult from my experience, so to the adoption of ownership. So people to step forward. So, hey, I'd like to be a data championship. Was that easy at EPFL? How did you go about so to make that ownership work in terms of people who would like to step forward and?
We had to ask where to. Okay, we first started to make to think about it more seriously after a meeting with the TU Delft. They already had a program in place. It was quite new and recent for them too. And then we said, okay, we have not the money for the data stewardship. Not every lab can have a data manager. We need a figure to have this bottom-up approach and to foster this practices part. And so we came up with the Data Champions community, and we provided the idea first to a group of very motivated people that we knew already. We made the word spread. We had focus groups in order to decide some of the to use Google Docs or to have researchers and staff and how to organize ourselves. And then we actually launched in November 2019. It was not, and then we obtained the let's say the green pass from the VPR for the vice presidency of research or the EPFL. We had to make all the steps to write let's say about the project and to have things settled. But I mean, this is not impossible to do. And the main idea is that, I don't know if this is the idea for everyone, but that this group will actually be independent later on. If it can grow independently later, it's a win. I don't know if it is feasible, because by the nature of universities, there is a part which is kind of always there, the institution, and the researchers always moving. That's also why I say that having administrative people, lawyers for data, or librarians, as data librarians like myself, it is very important too.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone who wants to react to that? I have a question for Sven then. Sven, from your experience, for what in terms of the data quality developments around data policies, can you summarize what is the key development and what is, to what extent that is relevant for other disciplines, maybe?
Well, so I think when it comes to data quality, especially for these publication-related research data, well, the quality in general is not that high. So what you often, for instance, you will not find some descriptions of the data, things like that, because the paper, for most of the researchers, I think their paper is the main description of the data, and we know, well, maybe this is not sufficient. And therefore, I'm not sure how often this data is reused. The only thing I can tell, the data in our data archive, for instance, is downloaded quite often, or whatever that means. But at least, of course, it depends on the data set. But it is used and reused. This is for sure. But however, I think in general, the data could be much better, especially when it comes to the descriptions and so on. But this, of course, has a lot to do what the researchers submit. And I think researchers in general do not want to invest too much time in creating metadata and descriptions and all these things, because, well, time is running and they have to do a lot of tasks. And this is maybe also something where we can support, at least to a certain degree. Nobody knows the data better than the researchers do, but however, well, maybe this can also be a task for us. I hope this answers your question, Rob.
Yeah, very much. Birgit, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to react what Sven just said. I mean, I was reviewing a paper recently. It was a data paper, and I also had this feeling of they view the paper as the description, and it's, I mean, my feeling is that the focus on data availability is really a cut short. I mean, there's no guidance on how they should document, or at least an about file or something where you describe your variables, or, I mean, it's often really nothing basically apart from, and then you dig through the paper to, and it's really hard. I mean, or what models they choose. It's really difficult to come to the point where you say, okay, this was about reproducibility, checking reproducibility, and then this there was a weird form of saying really black and white, yes or no, it's reproducible as a whole or not, and nothing in between, and you couldn't provide say where the weak points were apart from pointing this out in the narrative. It's the next step is also based on how good these data availability statements are, or the additional documentation. So
yeah, thank you, Birgit.
Oh,
I have a quick.
There are 2 questions in the chat. Can we look at these?
Yes. Excuse me. There is
RDM relates different domains and expertise, for example, legal and infrastructure. Are there any suggestions on how to align and organize this in the best way? Is the first one.
And who should answer that, Liisi?
I don't know, anybody, Claudia, Eva, Sven, anybody who has good ideas how to, or practical suggestions.
Maybe we simply can point to the Research Data Alliance, because I think it's their mission statement to exactly do that. So they have quite a few thousand members, and it's some kind of a bottom-up process. And with some dozen working groups and interest groups. I'm not too much into the Research Data Alliance, but I think it's their mission to exactly align and organize all these things.
Okay.
Can I have a question for Ingrid? To which level did you intend this question? Like at the level of the researchers asking for suggestions, or is this a level of organization, of the high level organization at university level services?
I think Ingrid has left.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Francesco. I said that she had to leave. She found it an interesting session, but she had to leave. So.
But there is another question to Sven. About do you have any insights into why Wiley has so few DAPs for its journals?
Not really, but well, even Wiley has a lot of journals with the data availability policies. So maybe just in comparison to Elsevier or one of the other great publishers, this is a little bit less. But well, for instance, we also find Sage, for instance, with not a single journal, or De Gruyter with not a single journal with a data policy. So I think, well, things are really developing very fast at the moment, and journals change their policy, start to implement a data policy, drop a policy. So all these things really happen in a very short period of time, and there are many and frequently changes to these data policies, and therefore also Wiley, of course. So they're doing a lot of great work in that regard. So
Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah, thanks, Sven. That was my question actually, but one of my colleagues mentioned that there was a push in the UK for funders to requiring them to have data availability statements. I don't know much about it myself, but I wondered if that was a factor. And here in the Netherlands, of course, we have some very active funders, SonNV and NVO, who are really actively pushing for open data and fair data. And that sort of brings everyone else along. But I know from speaking to one of them that they had trouble reaching out to funders in other countries and convincing them that they didn't really want to talk about this issue of data availability because they didn't see it as their responsibility. whereas the Dutch funders very much see this as their role to bring about change. And so maybe we as universities need to be engaging more with funders to really bring about this change, because on their own, they may not think it's their responsibility, but obviously it's going, how the funders define their grant conditions is a very big driver, of course, of academics' behaviour.
Definitely. I think this is definitely the case. And for instance, the German Research Foundation does not ask for things like that. They do not want to mandate things like that because they say, hey, we're a member organization and we do not want to act against our members. Well, this was quite short and too short probably. But however, there are very big discrepancies, I think, in Europe, also among the funders. And I think the funders, of course, are also the drivers because for the fact that the publishers are moving now. But of course, it also has a lot to do with the journals and their infrastructure, because many editors, I believe, really fear the additional work to get in touch with the researchers to discuss, hey, is this, we need another file, well, the description is not sufficient, things like that. So there are also, well, some issues in that regard. Yeah.
Thanks. And
Eva, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, Rob, just to go back
go
to Ingrid's last question, because actually I wanted to ask Francesca. Is it Francesco? Francesco, yeah. Sorry. Francesco, something similar about the network, because I think at Leiden we have a very similar network to EPFL. And one thing we're struggling with at the moment is a little bit how to address the diversity within the network. The policy people, the legal people, the researchers themselves, the PhD level people. Some people come just to listen to what's going on, but really what we want to do is engage and get input. But there's such a diversity with so many different opinions and interests within RDM that I just wondered if that was something you, Francesco, also struggled with at EPFL.
Thank you for the question. It's a very important question.
Maybe that's what Ingrid was alluding to. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Yeah, we struggle with this, but the approach is that we actually try to change subject to make most of the subjects be heard, and we live with it. I mean, if there are some professors that are already part of this group of people, of the community. They don't have time to follow. They don't have time to participate very actively. So we leave it like this. From time to time, and then there is the communication part. We have different channels. We have a group email, which is more formal. It is not for the spam. Of course, no one is spamming anyone, but it is not. It's just for the formal, let's say, communication. Then there is the LinkedIn part, which is very recent, actually. We have a Slack channel. I would have preferred Mattermost because it's open source, but okay, we have Slack, and then for instance, we have a draft of data policy. They all have the link. They can participate in putting their comments and try to modify the text. The professors and the lawyer and the others have the same possibility as the PhDs who are part of the community. So this is another way to communicate. This is another way to make them participate. When some of the data champions, for instance, present a tool, for very specific tool for a platform for reproducible coding. Maybe just the other, maybe some postdocs and a couple of PhDs are interested. The idea is to variate, and from time to time, as the pandemic wears off, to have a beer or coffee together. And this also, it is basic, but we are humans and we need to stay together, and maybe the topics will actually emerge from this.
Good. We'll take one more question from Eva and then have a 5-minute break. So Eva,
I would like just to comment also to Ingrid with these different domains. So I think it's important to collaborate, let's say, within institutions, and it may not be easy. So let's say here we appoint like one, it's a person, it's coordinator. So, and it's coordinated between this discipline, and it's important also to cover, let's say, rewarding or incentives for the researcher to practice at the, or at least for doctoral candidates, they should be also motivated. So this person can coordinate all these things if there is appointed for institution.
Okay, thank you. Shall we have a 5-minute break? And then start so people can get something to drink and have a brief pause and then take it up in 5 minutes. Yep. Yeah. So, okay, see you in 5 minutes. Bye. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. This was a short break, wasn't it? What I'd like to do now is, since we prepared that, is a small poll. And we're really interested to see the answers to the questions we prepared. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see this poll? Please nod. Liisi, do you see it? No, of course not, because I don't share my screen, right? I think
you have to launch it.
Yeah,
Question by question.
That's also true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now?
Rob, I saw the poll, but this is the one with all the questions. Are you sure that's the one you want to launch now?
Can we, Roos, can we do them one by one?
Yes.
Can you launch them?
Sure, I will take care of it, number one.
So I will close this dialog screen, right? So we prepared a number of questions, I think 7 in total, and which capture different aspects of working with FAIR and enabling FAIR in research libraries. And I would really appreciate if you would be if you would answer, since it's anonymous, if you would answer this this question, these questions. First one is the role of research libraries for RDM has become more important over the last years. Is the same or has become less prominent? Since there's a lot of noise, I'm going to here internally. Okay.
Currently, half of our audience has voted. So if anybody else would like to take part, now is your chance, and I will close the voting in half a minute.
Let's wait a second, Rose, since people have to switch maybe to another mode, or let's see if someone else, I think we have 32 participants, right? Yeah, no, 23 I see here. Attendees are now viewing questions, 23. 72% has voted. 16. Right.
Rob, please go ahead and close the poll, and then you can talk about it. Thank you.
I can only say end polling, right? So can you please, can we go over to the next question, Rose?
We have to share the results first, and then we can go to the next one.
Okay, so I can say stop share results now, right?
Well,
we are sharing the results right now, Rob.
Yes, but it would be nice to talk about the results maybe before we go to the next question. It's up to you, of course, but then afterwards we can move to the second question.
Yeah, so but since we have 7 questions and we have well, we have slightly less than half an hour, Let's see. The conclusion from this question, I think, is clear that the majority of our audience sees that the role of research libraries has increased, has become more important, and this surprises me somewhat. But it's good to see here the statistics on this topic. Okay, interesting. Next question. Let's stop share results. Okay. Is FAIR a priority within your library?
What do you mean by within?
I mean, literally, so is it in terms of staffing, resources? Is it a topic for the management? Is it prioritized? Is there ownership of FAIR in the library? Or is it of lesser relevance? And one of the topics that, since libraries have so many topics of potential relevance, is FAIR in the front line of the management team, for example?
Thank you.
Okay. I think this aligns with the answer to the first question. If the role of research libraries is still becoming more important, this closely fits with the fact that FAIR is also a priority more and more in the library, experienced at least by our audience. Okay, I'm going over to the next question. So I stopped sharing my results. Next question. Poll 3. So what are the challenges you face when it comes to the implementation of FAIR? And this is a multiple choice. Is that either implementing the FAIR guidelines, going beyond the guidelines, e.g., for example, how to make the machine actionable, better findable? Well, you can read for yourself.
And it's not multiple choice.
Isn't it?
No.
Okay, so there's multiple response.
No, it's you can just choose one as far as I can see, which is strange.
Then it totals on 200%. Right, yeah, it's no multiple choice. No, yeah. Okay, what we see here is that the main challenge is the adoption, the making FAIR work in practice by researchers. So it's not so much about the implementing the guidelines or going beyond the guidelines, but the application of FAIR practices by researchers. So, which is not too surprisingly, I think. Okay, interesting. Where do you see a long-lasting role for research libraries for RDM? Okay, very interesting. I think this will bring back the answers to this question later in the discussion. With respect to, for example, the full data lifecycle support, I'm curious to find out from people who answered this question with this answer to how they see this role and for full lifecycle support from libraries. But there's also a good number of people, a handful, I must say, that support that chose data curation and long-term data preservation, which also I think is of interest. Okay, all good. Next question, please. Yes. Do you feel confident in supporting RDM from your library? Right. Interesting, very interesting. Excuse me. So I'm also reading the chat, but that's, I think, the very interesting. I think that this balance of percentage of people who thinks that they feel confident with supporting RDM versus the percentage who does not feel confident with supporting RDM, which is a good topic, I think, for further discussion in a minute. Let's see. Right. Next question, please, Rose. What actually works best in your institutional environment? Choose one of the options. Okay. Right. RDM training. With comparable percentage for DMP support and offering a data repository. Okay. Rose, this was the last question, wasn't it? 7th?
We have one more poll.
We have one more poll. Okay. Fire.
Yes, and this question will have an open answer
Okay.
because of the regulations that Zoom has on polls. You can just ignore the second option and then use the first one to explain what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. What is, from your experience, your best RDM recommendation to other attendees? Please write it down in the chat. Okay. All good, I think. Is there anyone who wants to react on any of the questions we just asked for discussion? For example, what works best, or well, Roos, can we go through the questions again if we sort of and then stop with one of them and start discussing these? Can we do that, for example? Okay. Since, well, this is a large majority that says that the role of libraries has increased. Maybe go over to the next question, Rose. Let's see. Right, so this is also clear. I think it's a priority for a majority. It's for which there's also nearly 35 people who are saying, well, it's not a priority. Is anyone finds it important to speak up of why it's not a priority and it should be, or why they answered it's not a priority? I want to share that with the rest of the attendees. Okay. Over to the next question, Rose.
Rob, maybe one of the issues here is that at least we, from the panel, we don't have access to answering, so maybe we are not.
Okay, you don't.
We cannot answer ourselves, so I don't know if you expect from us any participation in commenting our not answer.
Right. No, just referring to the people who know what they answered, I assume, so that if you answered from it's not a FAIR is not a priority within our library. I was just curious whether anyone would comment to that. There's one recommendation which came in. Who says it's from Francesco, it's from you, said from okay, my personal recommendation is never lose sight of the big picture, as researchers are not there from computing for compiling forms, but to do quality research. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Right, this is a good one, I think, for discussion, since you have more variants here. Yeah, application of FAIR practices by researchers is the main topic. And given the answer that to another question that is, well, a substantial percentage of our attendees doesn't feel confident with supporting RDM. Can we elaborate a little bit more on the not feeling confident with supporting RDM? Who wants to speak up or explain a little bit about a more contextual perspective of why, from your institution or from your perspective, you don't feel confident yet with supporting RDM? Is there anyone who would like to take the floor and comment on that briefly?
I mean, Elisa made this comment, this is not, you have this in between. Some areas you might feel confident about and others not so much. And then it really depends on how it's organized on campus. If you have access to willing people who then step in, and if it's you are the front end person and in the back there are quite a few, you can pick heads and ask for help. Yeah, and you might feel more confident. And Eva, you also want to comment.
Eva.
Yeah, I would like to share my experience that we had this workshop for a data stewardship course, and I think I ran 2 of them, and I participated in third one. But it was, let's say, difficult to find people who are, let's say, this teacher go through the course, but they were not experienced people to run. It was difficult for them. So in this case, it was at the university, they were not so comfortable or not so ever experienced with the topic to train the others. But we started and we did somehow.
This is then an issue which is linked to you roll out the course, and then do they really implement it? Do they have the right people, right? I mean,
I could also comment if that's okay, which with regards to my own comment. I feel quite comfortable in advising researchers about what the FAIR principles mean and how that relates to their particular research. But some of the technical implementation that this requires is just not there. And sometimes it's difficult to tell researchers that they should, I mean, not that they should do something, but that we advise them to do something. And then there's no way to advise them how to do that. So that's a problem. And this makes sense for a field that's in development, and I don't think anybody has figured out the perfect way to implement FAIR. But this is something where this is why I said yes and no. Just sometimes you can't really advise research as well.
Yeah, or they have questions which are very specific in a way, you know, point me to tools for my field.
Yeah.
And you are just lost. I mean, in the way if you might not have a.
Yeah, something like that, or what they want doesn't exist, or they want to do something in the spirit of open science that they can't do from legally or on the basis of a contract that they signed. So it's sometimes we have to, and we're not quite comfortable yet in working around those situations.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other reactions or comments?
I think there's one comment in the chat too. It says subject complexity to complete the RDM and meet FAIR. So I think that can be a challenge that librarians themselves don't really know in details, you know, how to help them, or don't understand it in details.
Yeah.
But Eva has a hand.
Yeah, I have only comment. Let's say we train this early stage researcher, and but then when they come, let's say, to practice, sometimes they are not supported by supervisors, and there are not incentives to do the FAIR practices and research data management. So sometimes it's hard, and that's why it depends on the policy and huge support. So this we found also difficulties.
Okay. Any other last comments? We have 8 minutes to go within this workshop.
Yeah, I have a comment, but I can't find the hand button. I just have co-host stuff in my, so sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for smaller universities or smaller libraries, it's also just simply a question of capacity sometimes. So if you have a small library with 30 or so staff in total, you might have one person who's responsible for RDM support for the whole university, and then it's very difficult to like cover all the topics, and then this person might also have other tasks as well, and so it just has a small amount of their time that they can dedicate to this. So yeah, but I've seen, so there are, I think, approaches to have like a networked approach where you collaborate with other institutions to share responsibility for certain topics or certain tasks, for example, and so broaden the scope of expertise and knowledge that is available.
Yep. Thank you. Eva, last remark before I wrap up.
Yeah, only comment to Claudia. This is that we are going to do here in the Czech Republic. We have new project for National Support Center for Research Development Innovation, and we will build one-stop shop for researcher with all this information, targeted group, and some big in university, they have, let's say, open science centrum, but especially for those small, and making them like updated information. So this is we are practicing here. And also we are collaborating with other open science coordinator and libraries within, let's say, we have small network, and we have the Slack and communicating the things. So this is good practice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's time for a wrap up. Thank you all, first to the presenters and all attendees for joining this workshop. I think the presentation from Liisi showed on the pillars of engagement what is needed to get things going. with research engagement for this topic on RDM. And then I think the presentation of Claudia was really good in terms of what is needed and to share her experience with the a sprint on how to write a book on RDM and what works and what not. And I think then Sven gave a good overview, I think, of the recent developments of the journal data policies, and he had also some good recommendation in terms of if you want to support from a practical perspective researchers with how to better support them, for example, for making work of reproducible research. The presentation of Francesco was also interesting, I think, because the practical, what Francesco showed, I think, was engagement in practice, how this can work, right? From principles to work in practice and adopting practices from others and sort of bolstering it into something that works for your own institution, which is really good, I think, with the data champions, and also showing how adoption and ownership can work within an institution. And then the experience of that Eva showed us with the data stewardship course is also, I think, shows how many things are going on and how practical, I think, FAIR is being made and can be made through a course, from going beyond that sort of principled level, making it practical, and to making it work really in institutions and also on a wider scale in a more collaborative setting. So all in all, I'm surprised and also energized by all the developments that we see in the field, and that's not only sort of high level, but on a very practical level in all sorts of directions, which makes it, I think, worthwhile to work in this field and to keep us all well, energized and enthusiastic to work on these topics. So thank you all again for participating, and I hope to see you maybe next year live at the LIBER conference, and enjoy the rest of the conference if there are any more meetings. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.